When you talk about rehabilitating, and this class we're focused on the sexual violence and stuff like that, with the Me Too and the Time's Up stuff that has brought in all these cases that are a wide range of cases. So you have even the Larry Nassar, you have Weinstein and stuff like that. And those people can clearly not be rehabilitated. Do you believe that there are sexual violent offenders that can be rehabilitated?
I think, again, we have to look at the history. And I can tell you that when I read the histories, we get what's called a pre-sentence investigation report for every felony. And it doesn't just talk about the crime, but it looks at the history, the crimes, the background, the parents, the employment, drug addiction, mental illness, if there is any, medications they're on, all sorts of things. And it is very clear to me that most, maybe not all, but most persons who commit sexual assaults have been assaulted at some point in their life. And they didn't know then, especially when they were young, and they didn't know that that was wrong. They thought that was a way to love someone. And that's not always the case, but that is often the case. So when you have someone like that, and it's really embedded deeply, and from when they were young, you have to go back in time and you have to give them very specific long-term therapy. Is there a cure for sexual predators? I'm not convinced. I think you have to dig deep and look at the reasons why and address those and have a long-term plan for the abusers. I can tell you I had a defendant, and it's actually in my book. I'm so proud of this man. He was an older man, and he had been married over 20 years. And what struck me was that his wife was there every hearing, every time. And he was a very nice man, but predators often are. And what he liked to do, he never sexually assaulted anybody to my knowledge. There's no history of it. He liked to go to coffee shops, dry cleaners, places where young women worked, and pull out his penis and masturbate, show them what he had. And he had been arrested multiple times. And in our state, that crime, the punishment is from 1 day up to life. So I have really broad discretion. And the prosecutor stood adamantly and said, Your Honor, there are 8 or 9, I don't remember, it was maybe a dozen offenses. His guidelines are life. You have to give him life. There's nothing else that can be done with this man. The defense counsel said, well, I know of a doctor who is experimenting with this treatment, and it's Depo-Lupron. It's a birth control drug, and they use it for other things as well. And he said, I think they've had enough luck where would you be willing to have a hearing on it? So I said, absolutely. Over the objections of the prosecutor. So we had a hearing. And what I heard from this expert was that they'd had great success because it took down that sex drive. And so I said, okay, I'm going to put him in jail for a year. He'll be taking the medication, and then I'll have him on probation for 5 years because that's the maximum I could put him on. And the prosecutor said, well, Judge, we're going to appeal you. You absolutely have no authority to prescribe anything. I said, honey, I'm not prescribing anything. The doctor is. All I am doing is saying, follow your doctor's orders. And the man and his wife said, look, we have no problem. I will take the medicine. I'll be behind bars. I have no problem doing that. So for a year, the doctor came, the sheriff let him in, he administered the medication. Thereafter, he stayed on the medication for 5 years without incident. Not so much as jaywalking, nothing. And this had been a chronic problem. So that helped him. It saved his life. It saved his marriage. It saved our community, quite honestly. And it saved a lot of resources because it would cost about $40,000 a year for the rest of his life to house him in prison. Now, sexual predators, I think if you intervene early, maybe you can help and keep them in treatment. But I have also had multiple cases where someone is in prison, they are on parole, and they commit another even more heinous sexual assault. So do I think there's a cure? Not really. Do I think that we can get at this with early intervention and working with the medical community and trying to develop new drugs, making sure they stay in therapy, having support group, and having those trauma issues addressed? I think there's hope.